Coinbase BTC's USD on a 3 hour, that's 180 minutes. It's Francis, the crypto sniper, talking to you about Bitcoin. And the long way down, you will see there's been a bit of a trend. So this was where it bulked at the 10K. Falling wedge, minor pop, ran a lower low. Another falling wedge, ran a pop. Note that none of these pops were super powerful. They ran a part of the way. That's round about, if you went from the extreme high to the extreme low, you're getting about somewhere between the 38.2 and the 50% maybe. Down, 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 a big spill, ran the low of the wedge. Structure, new wedge, break back up again. Channel, this is a channel grinding up, rolling over, new low, new falling wedge. Squeezing, squeezing, squeezing. Squeezy, squeezy, Japanesey. He says out through the bottom a little bit on a smaller time frame. In other words, this little piece here was a wedge in of its own right. So if I just do a bit of that, you would see that this was all part of this bigger piece that I've got a grind line running along. We call that a descending grind. You'll learn more about it if you do a program. But anyway, that little squeeze through there. Also, so it was kind of, that was squeezing too, and you were getting that squeeze just before a major funnel level, which was the last time we got a bump up. And in fact, we were inaccurate at this point. We thought, yeah, you got to assume continuation. It would have run the previous low, so we went with that. And in actual fact, drift grinding up, little dip down, broke the grind line as it had needed to, that it had under there, and actually traded to the upside. So this could do very similar. It could come back down, maybe run a newer low, or maybe not, and maybe bottom around here, and then give us a little bit of a rally potentially. It could do that. The other alternative is that we were already in the break up top here, or over here with these tip-tap-toe step legs, and that these are in fact funnel levels that have been created, but it's a bit disproportionate. My bias would be to see more of a clear-cut pattern. A clear-cut pattern to, what am I talking about? What we've referred to before as scenario B, the ominous scenario that involves the structure being continuation for downside, a kneecap breaker of a final bear thrust. That if it made target, note I say if, there's no probabilities, there's no guarantees, there's only probabilities, he says, he restates, would horrify some people, and a large amount of people would cease to mine. Given that there's already 16 point whatever million bitcoins out there, a little slow up in the mining rate might not be bad for the proliferation and the valuation, most importantly. We're going to go up to 21 if they stop getting minted. That would be a big restriction on supply, and eventually if they start getting used a bit more and less store of value and slightly more utility, BTC could come back. But will it first horrify all the believers? And in a way I am a believer, but I'm also a trader, so I recognize that things can go both up and down. Would it horrify the believers by actually doing something like, and this is a guesstimation, we don't have a high 3 and low 3 yet, but something like $1,800. That is a sub 2K number. Shock horror. He's saying it again. That's not a prediction. People say he's made that prediction. All I'm saying is be careful. This existence is of this potential downside target is there, and it's live and real. That doesn't mean it has to happen. Doesn't mean it has to happen. You can drive drunk home on a motorcycle a few times before you actually have that crash. It doesn't mean you're going to have a crash. It doesn't mean you're even going to kill yourself in that crash. It just means you've increased the probability of that event occurring. If you do it at night without a headlamp and drunk, you can probably get home quite a few times, depending on how drunk you are. And this is just the case of what people cease to understand. A usual story, it's an on balance of probability assessment. It's an assessment of probability. In other words, we never negated this as potential continuation. So the theme is the same. You've heard me say it if you're on the channel a number of times. This is a guesstimated channel from around the 8 grand level. That's assuming we get a rally up here a little higher than the 8 grand. I'm not sure if there's any zeal to do that, but there's scope for it to get a bit of a rally. Some guys were saying, oh, I bet you're saying it's going to be a weak rally now after this pop. Look at the scale of that up move in terms of even the last one, which very quickly turned into a grind as well. And we said about this is not awe-inspiring bullishness. There's no euphoria. There's no awe-inspiring bullishness. This is, buyers, big buyers, always happy to get in the sub 7 range to the 6,000 range. And they've got in there and they've got in there. But eventually, if it keeps coming back and leaning on that trapdoor, it can spill a lot more. Will it be announcement led? Normally for a major spill, it often is. So that means a fundamental narrative. It could be cryptos are now deemed securities. Bitcoin, Ethereum, the entire asset category is now determined by the SEC in the US to be deemed securities. Tax must be collected on all speculators that have made profits, etc., etc. Ongoing. And who knows? That's me guessing. I have no particular view. It could be other news. Could be a rival hash graph. Could be anything. Could be crackdown in owners or exchanges giving out information. It could be a number of things that could lead to that. And also, just because you've set up doesn't mean you have to perform. So this could break, run to the second interim, turn and go, start to lose momentum, turn and go. It is later now in what has been a blow-off bear market. It is later now. What will probably occur is we'll first go quite low volatility. You can already see the candle wick sizes are getting smaller and smaller. Lots of little nibbles on this bigger time frame. They're getting back to this sort of size over here, pre the expansiveness of the volatility pushing up, where this was all super high volatility and every low point should have been sold for deeper lows. Now, are we in this macro low? One thing we can say, there's a couple of fairly unfriendly spills there and there, little moments of pushback, but broadly that has gone down quicker than it went up. Not significantly so, but slightly so. So the down leg momentum is stronger. In this instance, the reaction of the upside momentum to that sell-off was quite impulsive, and the subsequent down was less so. So what we're actually also seeing, which has me believe that this will still be downside continuation and a break will occur of, and you'll know it the minute you run the low too, that you're definitely in breakout mode, is that the momentum has changed. This upside momentum is dissipated and this downside has remained slightly stronger than the upside. So you've swapped sides, up in a high momentum sense and lower to the down, and then moderate momentum and slightly steeper here. So that actually means the sell-offs have come harder later on in the pattern. That means we're leaning on the floor generally. Can we be inaccurate, aka in your language wrong? We were here with the structure, and that turned first in a new trend, ran its target and overperformed, as you do, but it didn't overperform enough to invalidate all of this. We've said before, you are out of the woods for a downside continuation if you can get to 11.8. We couldn't do it. We couldn't do 10. So that was a period now which is once again showing that there is a lot of people leaning down on crypto market at the moment. Yep, that's your update, and let's take it down just one more time into that 45-minute time frame. You'll see again selling wicks, a big rejection, selling wicks, rally, shooting star. That would have been another if you combined those two candles, pump up and full engulfing back. Couldn't hold on anymore. So it was a little bit of a battle there, and the buyers were ready to cut and run. Look at that. So grind line, and cut and run. Boom, grind line is broken, momentum sell. This said, it hasn't returned all the way back down here. So you'll see that's reasonably impulsive for this lower time frame, not excessively so, and quite a small dot on the daily and the 4 hourly. But in comparison, the sell-off so far, unless this little hammer gets overwhelmed and we get more, so far not bad. So it's a 50% give back. You could base out a little higher and then make a marginally higher high on the upside, but once again, this would still not point, if it were to do that, it would still not point to a very strong and healthy market if it did that and that and that you just end up going into either a rising wedge or a channel, and it would be a slow grind up. So we can go right up to 8,000. We could go up to 8,000 and still be quite bearish because it's taking a while to get there. So it's not looking like strength to Bitcoin. The message and stays the same, and I'm going to keep reiterating the message stays the same. So careful out there. You could go for a while. You could even get up here. In terms of the bigger time frames, it don't impress me much, says Shania. So watch out, because you can't be wrong on everything. Okay, on that country and western note, play safe out there. Not a recommendation, not advice, just my opinions being shared on Freeview on how things are on BTC. And as a parting shot, take a look at that break, which wasn't enough, with that following grind, and tell me that this one will be. I do not feel so. However, remember, a sudden change of wind and climate could occur, and you could get very impulsive, and that would change everything. So a view is only relevant for the information and data that's been presented for it at this point in time. Also check the volume on that break versus the volume on the previous one, and you will see again lack of conviction, and this wasn't enough. How will that be enough? That's your message. Probability is on our side, not guarantees. Speak to you all soon. By the way, last night, last day to actually register for the webinar. If you go now, you'll just make it. We will be on at BST time 1930. That is British Summer Time 1930. That is in roughly 55 minutes from now. You'll get wire to trade defense, and only for the serious, not for everybody, only for traders, well-resourced traders that are serious about learning a skill and being part and contributing to a community who are all learning and developing a skill themselves and wish to be lifestyle traders. Speak to you all soon. Bye for now.